That's right. There were two meetings on the very same day because they don't know how to schedule shit.
Good evening, everybody. This is the meeting of the Rules and Public Policy Committee of the Indianapolis Marion County City County Council. Tonight we have a
What
proposal
is wrong with
number
this dude?
23-224 that directs the Rules and Public Policy Committee to review and prepare a report pertaining to the fiscal impact
He's about as
statement
jittery as
associated with the
Brown.
MESA union agreement. Before we jump into that, we're going to start with introductions. Down at our lower left, Councilor Dilk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Dilk, District 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Lene, District 22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Bain, District 21.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian Maury, District 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ellie Brown, District 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Nielsen, District 14.
Thank you, Mr.
Jitterbug.
Chairman. Carlos Perkins, District 6.
Jitterbug.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bob Bosley, District 12.
Good evening, Maggie Lewis.
Good evening, Leroy Robinson, District 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Councilor Lakeisha Jackson, representing Indianapolis on the far east side, Warren and Lawrence Townships.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Councilor Dan Boots, District 3, and I have the honor of chairing the committee tonight. And just want to casually say hello to Maggie Lewis as well with her.
I forgot my new council district.
It's 5.
You're
It's
good.
5.
Yes. So let's jump into
It's also just not
proposal
paying
number
attention.
23-2024. And I think we're going to have a presentation this evening by Abby Hansen, the Office of Finance and Management, concerning the fiscal impact of a statement of labor
Whoopee.
agreement. Ms. Hansen.
If I remember right, this woman never had her stuff together. She was never prepared.
Good evening, members of the committee.
Ms. Hansen.
As Councilor Boots said, I'm Abby Hansen. I'm the Deputy Controller for the Office of Finance and Management. In the audience are Chief Sellis, the Director of MESA, and Hank Harris, President of Local 416. By way of background, the Metropolitan Emergency Services Agency was created in late 2021 by General Ordinance 40 with the goal of unifying emergency management into one agency. MESA combined Emergency Management Bureau of IMPD, 911 communications from the Marion County Sheriff's Office, the Public Safety Communications Division of the Office of Public Health and Safety, and the telecommunicators from the Indianapolis Fire Department.
Let's just consolidate everything. One big monopoly.
In late 2023, MESA and Local 416 finalized a labor agreement.
416. Do you know who else? Do you know what else they're involved in right now? Local 416 is working on getting Wayne Township Fire Department to merge with the Indianapolis Fire Department. 416 is corrupt.
Per municipal code, once a tentative agreement has been reached, the controller is responsible for presenting a fiscal impact study to the Rules and Public Policy Committee, after which the committee will issue a report, which was what brings me here tonight. As part of this general resolution, the committee received the Fiscal Impact Study memo, and I will review some highlights in the presentation.
Lovely.
The contract is going to be effective for 2 years, covering 2024 and 2025. The table on the screen shows the different fiscal components of the agreement. Starting on the left-hand side are the different financial terms in the agreement. The first left-hand column with numbers is the cost of such provisions today.
Perfect attendance.
Moving to the right are the increased cost of those provisions in 2024 from current status, and then their increased cost in 2025 compared to current status.
I'm all for
And then
union
finally,
business.
the overall
Holiday pay,
increase
good
in
God.
costs over the life of the contract.
We need to stop
For
with
the
these paid
presentation,
holidays.
I was going to talk about the three largest cost items, which are base pay increases, longevity, and overtime. But the memo covers all of the items in the table, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on those items. First, to review salary increases by position. The table on the screen shows the base pay for each collectively bargained position from 2023 to 2025. For 2024, the salary increases differed by position, And this was done to address pain points in the agency, specifically around entry-level positions, as those salaries were less competitive than surrounding counties. The increases at the supervisor and control operator level are less significant, as they received a more sizable increase during the compensation study in 2022. However, from the inception of MESA in 22 to this contract, salaries will have increased an average of nearly 45% for these positions.
You know what? I can almost guarantee you that the pay raise that they're getting isn't going to be that much of a difference because of union dues.
For 2025, members will receive a 4% increase. The cost of the salary increase over the contract is $2.5 million. With this agreement being finalized after the passage of the 2024 budget, we are cautiously optimistic that the cost of the contract will be afforded within their existing budget. However, if not, we will come before the Admin and Finance Committee in the fall to address any costs that cannot be absorbed. The last two items I wanted to specifically call out are the increased costs in longevity. Because a majority of these employees were covered under previous contracts through IFD and the Sheriff's Office, longevity is not a new concept, but the structure of their longevity is changing. Longevity will be structured similarly to other public safety contracts, where it is based on 0.5% of a telecommunicator's salary, and then that increases by 0.5% every year until 20 years, and then there's an additional $100 annually after that. Finally, overtime is the other large fiscal impact at estimated at $465,000 next year, or an
That's
increase,
crazy.
increase from the prior year. And that's really driven because additional positions will now be eligible for time and a half, whereas currently they aren't.
That's lame.
With that, I will take any questions that you might have.
Positions are getting overtime
Thank you,
now.
Ms. Hanson. Questions from the council?
Chris Handsome.
Counselor Osley.
Thank you very much. How are we estimating the overtime?
It's very complicated, but in general, we took an assumption about how much overtime was earned in the prior year. So we took 23 as a baseline, and then we made assumptions about people who were not eligible for overtime, and we increased it by, we kind of had a comparison cohort, because at one time, its supervisors were not eligible, and at one time they were eligible, then they weren't eligible, now they're gonna be eligible again, so
that's lame.
we kind of were able to take the data comparing the change in
So
their
the
overtime
supervisor
hours
pay,
worked,
that's gonna screw everything.
and then we took that and multiplied it by the increased salaries that people will be receiving.
I appreciate that. It almost seems like an 80% increase over the prior year. So just curious, why such a delta?
Why such a delta?
I think, and I say I don't know this for 100% fact, but my gut says
Oh my
it's because
God.
the supervisors have a higher rate of pay.
Yeah,
And
I
also
just said
the
that.
way in which overtime is kind of an operational thing of the way overtime is bid, or the people that choose overtime at times, I think, has been on the higher end of the spectrum. And so I think that's why it's not shaking out proportionally.
You don't know.
Very good. Thank you, Chairman.
Sure. Any other questions? Yes, Counselor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say I'm excited to see this. In 2019, I spent,
Of course she does.
I was
She's
supposed to be
union
at the
shill.
911 call center for 4 hours, and I only made it for half an hour, listening into calls as they came through. The people who answer our calls are amazing, kind, thoughtful individuals who have hearts that go out but are able to handle. In that 30 minutes, I heard calls about gunshots and car accidents and missing children, and had to take off the headphones because I started to cry.
Dude, just listen to Broadcastify. Oh my God, I have so many recordings of stuff of some kid like accidentally shooting his mom in the stomach. I have crazy stuff for like a dude, I think a guy got his head ran over or something. There's overdoses all the time in downtown, all the time, especially when it's warm out. And we can't have emotionally compromised people in these very important positions. because then you're just leading with your feelings instead of just leading with your facts. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it is just me, but I tend to lead with logic.
I think this is a great way to start getting them up to a salary that they deserve, but I don't know if we'll ever be able to do
How
that.
much is enough,
So
Ally?
I'm very
How
happy
much
to
is
see
enough?
these increases in pay, particularly in the overtime. Thank you.
He's not wearing sunglasses today.
Councilor Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the current increase, the current contract, how do we compare to our neighbors in terms of base salary?
I actually will ask the chief to speak to that because I don't remember the exact data.
Good evening, committee members. Tom Sullis, Chief of Mesa.
What's up, Tommy?
So comparably now that we will be, so our entry level is the part where we were hurting the most. And to give you just a little bit of an explanation, because of our call volume, like all major metropolitan cities, we have people that are classified as telecommunicators that just take the calls and shuffle the call over to a control operator. Control operator sends it to the first responders and manages the scenes with the first responders on there. And that's where our biggest gap was in hiring people, because when we look at our surrounding counties, when you hire there, you're hired as a call taker, fire operations, EMS operations, and police. So they're able to pay them more like we do our control operators. So that's where our biggest gap was with our entry-level positions on that. So now our entry-level positions compare very closely to what their control operators make, and then our telecommunicators have the ability to move up into control, which we will be above the other surrounding counties.
So they were getting paid about the same, really, because what he's saying is the outside counties had a lot more to deal with, so they were getting paid more, where in Indy, they were not having to deal with as much, and so they were getting paid less. It's so weird that people have a hard time understanding the less you do, the less you will get paid.
Thank you.
Any others? Yes, Councilor Brown.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment to the proposal. I move to amend the attachment to proposal number 23, 2024 by deleting the following language that is stricken through. And if you are looking at the language, it's number 4, the last 7 words, and will be paid at straight time is stricken
Aren't
through.
you supposed to talk about this first?
Number 7, the last sentence, the differential will not be considered for overtime calculations, has also been stricken through. I so move.
Do we have, so we have a motion on the floor for the amendment?
Nobody
Do we
knows
have
what's
all
going on
those
right
in
now.
favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved, so passed.
Bain didn't say anything.
Sure, Councilor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we usually get time to discuss amendments before we vote on them, but what is the purpose of the amendment, given that this is a union agreement and we're amending it here in committee?
Yeah.
It's really because I made a typo.
Okay.
I wrote this memo in December, I think it was, I don't know, it's been a while ago. And as we worked through the contract, some of my assumptions about how FLSA standards were wrong. And so we just have to amend that out because I don't want this memo to make it look like one thing when it turns out I was wrong in the first place.
Perfect. Thank you.
And we do have some additional discussion, and you are correct, Councilor Baines. I should have entertained more discussion before I moved so abruptly. Ms. Hanson,
Newbies.
could you discuss just a little bit, under the regs that
Regulations.
mandate this report being adopted, there are certain things that we must cover as set out by statute. One of them being, can you please just discuss the effect of this agreement on our budget?
So it's really hard for me to be very certain about how this is going to impact the 2024 budget, or I guess if we will stay within our 2024 budget. But we are cautiously optimistic. When last year, Mesa underspent their personnel budget by over $1 million, and it might have even been more than that. can't recall at this moment. And so we know that there was some space in what they had last year. Their budget for 2024 has increased, so we are hopeful that they will be able to absorb the cost of this contract within the budget that they have available. But we would certainly have to come back in the fall if that is not the case.
This lady's the worst. She's not prepared at all.
Another issue would be, that we need to discuss a little bit is, the current revenue source, so that, if there is the increase in expenditures here, what is the revenue source that we?
Where's
currently
that
have to
money?
cover
Give
these
me the money.
increases?
The MESA is funded from two different sources. One is public safety, 911 fee revenue. So on your cell phone bill, I think it's a cell phone bill, we get revenue from that. It's a revenue that is shared with us from the state. It's been pretty consistent over time, but we do receive supplemental distributions in October, and so our distribution in last fall was a little bit higher than we were budgeting, so our fund balances are a little better than we were expecting. And then the second source of revenue is income tax, and it's a amount off the top. And for the 2024 budget, we did increase that amount. It was $14 million. It went up to $18.5 million in this year's budget. So.
Okay, thank you. And do you anticipate any additional funding sources needed?
No, not any additional.
Okay. And then, so you do believe the current appropriations, the current funding sources will cover these increases?
Are you sure we got enough money is what he's saying, man.
Correct.
He's not convinced.
Counselor?
So going to just to understand the 911 fee, is that a formula fund that the city does receive from the state, or is that pass-through funding subject to the biennial budget at the state level?
I don't know if I know the answer to that question at that level of detail.
Okay.
I know that they have an amount that's always guaranteed annually. It's called the hold harmless amount. And so we budget that, and then if at the end of the year they have underspend in the state 911 expenditures, it is then distributed as a supplemental distribution to counties, and it's based on a 90-10, so 90% population, 10% like a standard amount. So we receive obviously the majority of that.
Yeah, because Andy gets a lot of 911 calls.
Yes, Counselor Jackson.
Thank you. Does any of the HR handbooks or documents or anything or have to be updated for this?
I don't think so.
Just curious. Thank you.
Miss Handsome doesn't know shit.
Complied with our mandates under those regulations?
You've done a swell job.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any discussion from the public regarding this proposal?
Oh, look at this guy.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. Hank Harris, President of Local 416. We have the honor of representing the public safety dispatchers under MESA. I just want to first acknowledge the dispatchers that are currently working right now. They had a MESA board meeting last night, yesterday? Tuesday. And just to give you some facts of just January, the emergency dispatchers answered 74,797 911 calls. They dispatched 60,672 runs. Out of those runs, again, this is just January, there were 81 lives saved due to CPR because of our dispatchers, and there were 7 childbirths that were done through the dispatch center. There was one police dispatcher, female Latino dispatcher, who was able to help with a communication barrier to help a childbirth as well. That's just the month of January.
One of the coyotes.
So as you can see, as Councilor Brown mentioned, it is a very tough job. There's roughly 128 dispatchers. If you do the math, it's almost 600 calls per dispatcher in the month of January. So it is a tough job. They answer one call, hang up, and have to answer another call. So I want to thank OFM staff, Abby, Ian, Candace, for working with us. It was a great negotiations. It was a first time for a lot of us. So they did great. I also want to thank Director,
So was it like 30 calls a
Chief
day?
Ellis, Director Brown.
Something like that?
For their work. And I'm happy to say for the first time I've ever had this opportunity to say this, the contract was ratified unanimously. Every member voted in favor of it. So we're here in 100% support. So thank you, and thank you to the team.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Any other members of the public wish to discuss this proposal? Seeing none, we have a motion from the council.
4 calls an hour.
Councilor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move proposal number 23 to the full council with a do pass recommendation.
I second that, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor of passing this proposal on to the council indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, so passed. And thank you, Ms. Hanson, for the work this evening. Before we formally adjourn, I want to make sure from Council Pierce that we've crossed our T's and dotted our I's again and got the motion, and I don't want to violate regulation and get,
Not
want
bad,
to get the report out.
We can correct anything else in post-op.
Perfect, all right.
Post-op.
Yes, ma'am.
I was going to make a recommendation to adjourn the meeting.
Second, all right. Unanimously agreed, so moved, adjourned, thank you.
Well, that was easy. Not much there on that. 20 minutes and they're out. They get their $50 or $100, whatever it is, for their 20 minutes of hard labor, sitting in front of a desk, talking into the void of rules and policy and spending taxpayers' money. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I think the last one was in November, so maybe we won't see another one until April. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if Danny Boots wants to keep this going or not on time. So that's all I got. Till next time.